In A.T. Robertson, The Divinity of Christ in the Gospel of John, we're on page 106. This subhead is Cowardly Disciples, based on the passage John 12:37 to 43. The warning was needed. That is the warning just before that, where Christ warned the people not to sin against the light that it was being revealed in him. Some even of the rulers who had come to believe on Jesus were yet afraid to take their stand on his side because of the Pharisees, the text says, lest they be put out of the synagogue. They cared more for social standing with their set than for loyalty to Jesus. They cared more for the glory from men than for the glory from God. Their eyes were blinded by the god of this world, so that they were unwilling to step out into the open on the side of Christ while he was unpopular with the Pharisees. Jesus is the Son of God, the Savior from sin to his death on the cross, is still taboo in many modern religious circles who practice intellectual and religious ostracism as effectually as the Pharisees of old. In some modern scholastic circles, and here he's talking from the standpoint of the end of World War I, in some modern scholastic circles it is unscholarly and unscientific to advocate the deity of Christ or the value of the cross. They laugh at the idea that Isaiah saw the glory of Jesus. According to John 12:41, they saw his glory. John has said that back in chapter 1, remember. What did they mean by that? Well, in John 12, Isaiah 6 is quoted. More about that in a minute. They laugh at the idea that Isaiah saw the glory of Jesus, or that there is much glory for anyone to see today, save that of a well-meaning but wholly misguided Galilean peasant who came to imagine that he could save mankind and whose martyrdom led his followers to deify him, and so to start a new superstition which the world is rapidly outgrowing by modern knowledge, which is the only light of man. And John, or the author of this gospel, they say, is simply the worst of the deifiers of Jesus. Now, sad to say, many ex-witnesses have bought into this, what amounts to radical criticism of the Bible, uncritically. The next subhead is an epitome of Christ's position, which is taking up John 12:44 to 50. John represents Jesus as giving this summary in one address, though some critics argue that it is a gathering up of teachings on various occasions, though why it is impossible for him to have said it at this time is not clear. Each sentence presents sharply the claims of Jesus about himself, which Jesus now boldly states. Faith in Jesus is faith in God who sent him. Seeing Jesus is seeing God. His mission is to bring light to set men free from darkness. Obedience to Christ is the way to escape judgment. Rejection of Christ is rejection of God. He has the Father's commandment, which brings life eternal. All of these things Jesus had spoken at other times, and they occur here and there in the Gospel of John before this period. Now Jesus summed the case up between him and the world, which was rejecting him. There is no escape from the issue of Jesus. He confronts every man in all the world through all the ages. He challenges every man today. What think you of Jesus the Christ? That's the big question. Matthew records for us too in Matthew 16. What will you do with Jesus the Savior? What will Jesus the Judge do with you? Dr. Philip Moxom, in the North American Review of 1916, in an article called A Modern Conception of God, says this, quote, "But the Jesus of the fourth gospel is a sublime egotist, sublime but an egotist, wholly unlike the Jesus of the synoptics, or the synoptists, that is, the writers of the synoptics." End of quote from Moxom. This is a common superficial view of some critics. One need only refer to Matthew 11, the end of Matthew 11, Luke 10, Matthew 28, the all authority on heaven and earth passage, Luke 24, the very end of Luke. And there is the voice of the Father at the baptism, the voice of the Father on the Mount of Transfiguration, the assumption of divine power to forgive sins in Luke 5, besides many similar passages. The assumption that the Synoptic Gospels present only the humanity of Jesus, while the deity of Jesus appears only in John's Gospel, is utterly false. Both features appear in Mark, that is the earliest of the Gospels, and in the so-called Q document, which is the sayings of Jesus, which is much of the criticism of the Synoptic Gospels wraps around the significance of the sayings of Jesus. But these claims that Christ makes on his own behalf are in Q as well as Mark, as well as John and the other two synoptics. The shading of the picture is different, but the person is the same in all the Gospels. Which brings us to what Christ says explicitly in this chapter, what John says about Christ, that we have seen his glory. What does John mean by we have seen his glory? What's the link with Isaiah chapter 6, where Isaiah becomes a prophet and he sees the glory of Yahweh in the temple? So we'll put that link on your screen. See you soon.